Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started then. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. And this is in fact a very, 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 very special episode of Geeky Gentlemen because this is our 299th episode of Geeky Gentlemen. So next time we will be doing a special episode on the movie 300 because that just makes sense. It's too good a joke not to use.
Was your 23rd episode about the number 23?
No, it was not.
Should have been. Missed opportunities, man.
Yeah, my bad.
I mean, alternatively, we could review Iron Man number 300, which is one of my favorite comics.
No, we're it's just the title of the movie is 300. That's what we're doing.
And you also could have done like 20, that fucking Vegas movie 21, and have that be your 21st episode.
Yeah, I mean, we could have, but that was before we realized it was going to be like a long-term thing. Like, it took us 8 episodes to get a name, so I don't think that we really thought it through that far ahead. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into what we're talking about this week, though, on our 299th episode. We had Ben on last week, because I'm Sid... Oh, shit, I totally forgot to introduce everyone. I'm Sid Partu. Joining me today is Steve Baxi and Ben Thompson, also known as Mr. Cool 210, and Steve Baxi is also known by his internet alias, Steve Baxi. That is so goddamn creative.
You motherfucker, and you just spoiled his alias to the whole world. Like, now he can't hide from all the people who hate him.
Pretty much. But that's okay, because you can just use the hashtag why you want to hate fuck Steve Baxi. It's gonna be a thing, damn it. So anyway, Ben picked our topic last week because he was here last week, and he's here again this week. Thank you for returning, Ben. What are we talking about this week?
We are for your 299th episode, we are discussing a movie almost no one has heard about or could give a shit about, called The Perfect Host.
Yeah, and this is a movie that I know I'd seen once before. It's been on Netflix for a very long time now. And I have more or less the same general takeaway from it that I did originally, and that is it's a really fucking weird movie.
Well, let me guess. Okay, so weird for you. I'm not sure if that means you like it or not, but I'm gonna guess you're maybe indifferent to it. I like it, and Steve hates it.
I think it's a really interesting first draft.
Okay.
So I don't hate it, but I think there's lots of wasted potential and lots of problems with what it wants to be versus what it's doing.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to make you hate it. You ready?
Sure.
It's based off of a short film called The Host that came out 10 years earlier, made by the same director, so it's not a first draft.
Okay, well that makes more sense then. Then I think it might just be a bad movie.
Okay.
Ouch. That hurts, Steve. That really hurts.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm indifferent to it. I'm just like, there are certain leaps in logic in this film that I don't think I understand and that I don't think work with what it's trying to do thematically. But at the same time, I really like David Hyde Pierce, and the writer-director was writing this movie and had like 5 people in his mind of who he wanted to play this character, and David Hyde Pierce was one of them, and you can fucking tell. Well, because he is Niles Crane going crazy.
That's kind of why I enjoyed parts of it, but You're right. There's leaps and logics, and I think it's a movie that doesn't seem to understand how to structure itself. But
I
we'll
guess
get
I can
into more
kind
of
of,
that.
I guess I can kind of agree with that. But I liked the movie mainly, I guess. Well, I mean, whether or not you think it's a good movie or a bad movie, you got to at least admit one thing. Like, with Ian saying that the yeah, it's a weird movie, but it's also very different from a lot of what was out there at the time. So maybe that kind of helped me get a bit more into it. Plus, I mean, Pierce's performance is pretty much what saves it. I think everyone who's seen the movie can agree with that part.
Oh, he is tons of fun to watch. Even like he's either scary or just hilarious, depending on the scene.
Yeah, he does a really good job, especially when you get to the end and you realize he's been a cop the whole time. I think he does a really good job of like subtly shifting his performance throughout.
Yeah. My biggest thing with his performance is you can tell that he's like you'll see actors do this a lot. They'll play a character for a very long time, and then like the next couple big things they do, they try to do everything they can to just like strangle that character in the public eye so that they show I'm not them. Like Daniel Radcliffe did this with Harry Potter. Because one of the first big movies he did after Harry Potter, one of the first big things he did was How to Be Rich and Successful Without Really Trying, or whatever the name of that movie was, or play was. And then he did Horns, which is just like this really inappropriate movie that's filled with like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that whole kind of thing. So it's just trying to be the least Harry Potter thing he could do. And this is like very similar to Niles Crane, but it's creepy and weird, so it's not going to have that same appeal that Niles Crane did.
For about the first half hour, I think this movie is almost counting on you to know David Hyde Pierce as Niles, because it's such a Niles setup and such a Niles decorum and such Niles dialogue, and then it stops. And so yeah, I can definitely see your point. I think though that's part of the problem, which is that the movie doesn't seem to come together at any point. It feels like it's a series of twists, but when you really start connecting the dots, it doesn't. It never quite makes a perfect puzzle.
Well, there are some things in the movie that I will agree don't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, one of the kind of big things is we never really find out at the end if, like, he doesn't kill John at the end of the movie, but we never know if he actually ended up killing that other guy that was in the notebook, or if the people he's seeing, like, it's kind of hinted that the people he's seeing at his dinner parties are his victims that he just starts like seeing as his friends and guests or whatever, and we don't know if like if he's like actually killing them, or if he's like just if he's just like just having his fun with them, then letting him go. And
see, that's my thing with it, is like, if you keep doing this, you're gonna get caught. So I need to like know more concretely, what is he doing to these people?
Yeah, and like we only ever see pictures of one other person. So I don't think it's that all the party guests are actual people that he's done this to.
He's got a whole book, though, so it makes me wonder, like, maybe he's filled it entirely up with people, but if it's been that many people and they've all had the same situation as John, where they just had weird makeup that he somehow knows how to do, and then let loose, then why wouldn't someone come back?
Well, not just that. I mean, he would have been caught way earlier.
Yeah.
Like, if it's just one homeless guy, because, like, the important thing is, you only see the one other dude in the pictures. They go through 3 pages, and all you see is the one guy. He has a whole book, but the rest of it around that one guy is just drawings, right?
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah, but
they go...
He's drawing over Sorry?
No, he's not drawing... He's only drawing on some of the pictures, but the only actual pictures we see are of the one guy. And then there's like that scene where they go, oh, don't we have the last party on Super 8? So if there were other, like, multiple people that he's done this to, then wouldn't that be film of them as opposed to film of him?
Yeah, it's kind of weird in like how it keeps turning, because it's supposed to be, I think, like one of those classic paranoia thrillers where like these two guys are meant to be mentally playing at each other, and maybe there's a version of this movie where he lets John go not because it's his MO, but because of how he came to understand him as a person, but not a lot of that comes out of the movie, and I think that's ultimately the problem.
It's like you said.
I can tell you the movie that does this exact situation, or not this exact situation, obviously, but does something incredibly similar a lot better. And that is the movie Sleuth.
Yes.
Well, Steve, it's funny you mentioned that the movie's kind of like a paranoia thriller when really I got the impression from watching it and from the director and interviews, it's really more of a dark comedy, if anything.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like there are moments in this where I laugh, but it's never me laughing with the movie. It's me laughing at the movie, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe see the dark comedy, but it's one of those things where I'm like, is it supposed to be a joke or is it really just as ridiculous?
Yeah, because like there's that scene where he's doing what is it, the electric slide or whatever?
Yeah.
And that's like really funny, and it's funny in that setting of how fucking weird it is, but at the same time, that's more me laughing at that choice to put it in there than me laughing at them trying to be funny about it.
I really regret picking this movie now.
No, it's okay. We can, like, it's weird. I like this movie on some level. I guess my biggest issue with it, besides some of the logic stuff, is just thematically, it doesn't really work.
It doesn't coalesce into anything. Yeah, I think.
Well, no, hold on. Let me get at what I think the theme that it's trying to get across at certain points is, and that is that people use each other as objects. They play games with each other. They put on these masquerades and they lie to each other, and it's all just a big act. And so, you have John, whose character is who gets into Warwick's house by telling a lie, and then that whole thing develops into the situation, which is the core of the movie. And then we get to toward the end, and we find out that the girl that John robbed the bank for was playing him all along. And that's really an interesting idea. And then, Warwick has to play his detective toward the end. So it's this interesting idea of everybody's playing each other, but with the payoff that we get with John getting out of the party by it all being a play, I don't know if that really works for like showing the consequences of playing someone.
I think based on your interpretation, it's nowhere near heightened enough for that to work. Like, I think what this movie ultimately needed to be in tone for us to work with that and not really pay attention to logic issues and just kind of cut it off with John being let go, is you needed to make this something more similar in tone to like Donnie Darko, which is a very dark and serious movie, but it's also a movie that is more...
that explains the science behind Smurfs. Like, it's got... No, that's seriously what this movie needs, is it needs the science behind Smurfs, right?
Yeah, I mean...
You need someone to explain the biology of how Smurfs replicate.
It's one of those things, right? Like, it feels like this should be about... it should be like the melodramatic, the themes are being explained to you in a more heightened way, and that's kind of why it's interesting, is like why the situation is so heightened, but how it reveals deeper truths, and kind of like Nightcrawler, where it's really scary how insane it is, but it's more scary because it might be true. And the bigger problem I have with it, though, is like, I think, I didn't read it the way you did, Ian. I kind of read it as, we've got John, and we've got, what was his name? Warwick. Okay. We have Warwick and we have John, and Warwick is from like this deep, high-end, privileged sort of existence, and John isn't. And they have that exchange after the chess game, where John is like, you can't call me worthless, and everything about them is based on they don't understand each other. They're never going to be part of each other's world, and so it seems more like a class mind game to me. But then the police stuff happens, and I don't think that does anything to help the plot or the themes of the movie work in any sort of way. And I think a lot of the girlfriend stuff we get towards the end is kind of just tacked on. I think if we just kept that relegated to flashback, it would have worked better. I think this is a movie that needed to open with him waking up in Warwick's house, being captured, and getting like slow reveals of how he got there, and then end when Warwick gets thrown out.
Well,
You mean when John gets thrown out?
Or John gets thrown out. Yeah, like I feel like it should have been cut on both ends and heightened a little bit because I don't think it really understands what it's doing in places.
Well, I can understand that, and I kind of had the same mentality through most of the movie because I felt like why, because I haven't seen the movie in a while, so I thought, why do they keep cutting to these police things? But what I actually saw, even a little bit differently than you two did, with the whole thing of him being a cop. That really kind of played into the idea that I thought maybe the theme was more of a thing of that, despite that outward appearances really don't mean, or like who you are on the outside doesn't really mean jack shit to who you really are, because throughout in the beginning of the movie, John is this really despicable, unlikable criminal, and when we first see Warwick torturing him, we're like, oh hell yeah, like treat him like shit, Warwick, he deserved it. But then as the movie goes on, John, like, you start to feel more sorry for John and like more sympathy for him because he's just this regular nice guy who did what he did for what he thinks is a noble reason. And even though Warwick is a cop and supposed to be this noble good person, inside he's this dark, deep, terrible person who likes to has victims and kills people. And I think it is just a thing of like, maybe it's a don't judge a book by its cover kind of story. And like
I think that builds into the what I was talking about with the idea of playing, of pretending, of acting, basically, that a lot of this goes into, because there's a lot of stuff with theater and with Warwick's whole lie to his neighbor, oh, we just came back from a costume party and he's all in character. I think there's a lot of stuff like this, and I think what doesn't make those themes work is I never know when Warwick is doing something to John that's real or if it's all faked, right? Because like you have the throat slitting thing, he wakes up in the trash with his throat slit, and I'm like, okay, and that was just makeup. Well, then what about when he cauterized the dude's foot? Was that real? Because that looked like it was fucking real.
And then what's the point of the makeup if you're gonna do certain things anyway?
Yeah, if you're gonna actually when he's hitting him to knock him out, I'll give him a pass. But when he's just punching him, like the first time that he punches him and says manners, like that kind of contradicts the themes of this is all an act, this is all pretending. Like even if it is all an act, it's still terrible to do to someone. But thematically, those kind of actions don't work with the story that's trying to be told.
If you say that it's like, oh, it's all an act, it's all pretend, I think I'd argue more that him being the cop is more all pretend and all like fake, because as you notice when he's being a cop or when he's being the detective or whatever, his party guests are still following him in uniforms, and they throughout the movie they sort of seem to be his inner thoughts, I guess. Like they kind of like they're kind of showing like his inner thoughts on the outside. Like they're asking like, oh, what are you gonna do about the neighbor? What if she calls the police? And you should take your meds and all this sort of stuff. So I think maybe it was a case of he does sort of do this whole thing, but due to the fact that John did beat Warwick in that chess game, and he did promise John, oh, you're free to go, and he says like, one thing I'm not's a liar, despite the fact that he could have killed him, he let him go because that's what he promised he'd do if he won the chess game, which he did.
I think the problem,
I guess I hadn't thought of that.
I think the problem with the inner thought thing is we don't get enough of the people and how John or how Warwick interacts with them. I think part of the issue with all of this thematic stuff is that the movie keeps giving you twists and never lets one status quo build or resonate with you. So at the opening of this movie, it's all this big crime thing and you're following along with this criminal, or you suspect is a criminal, and then oh shit, there's an armed gunman in a store, and then that's over, and then he's gonna go and hide out in people's houses, and then he takes over, and then it turns out that he robbed a bank, and then oh shit, it turns out that David Hyde Pierce is psycho, and then oh shit, it turns out he's talking to people, and then oh shit, it turns out it was all pretend, and then oh shit, it turns out he's a genius at chess, and oh shit, it turns out his girlfriend betrayed him, and oh shit, turns out he's a police officer. Like, it just keeps ramping and ramping and ramping, that I don't think it ever has a sense of like what it wants to be thematically, and just more so wants to string the audience along.
Yeah, and like again, that can work. It's just you need to do it better than this,
And I think the movie that does it better is Sleuth.
Well, it's like
it is almost the exact same situation of two guys in a house, one has committed a crime and the other has leverage on him, and it keeps going back and forth between those two. And it's the exact same situation, it just works better there.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned like the whole fact that this was based on a short film. I've seen the short film, like it's on Vimeo, and I watched it, and it's a weird case of like this. I do kind of agree that this movie probably would have worked more as more of a short film, but I think what they have in this movie works better than what they did in the actual short film, just because David Hyde Pierce did the performance better than the other guy did, and it's like maybe that's what he thought was going to save the movie, and like to me anyway, it sort of did. Was the performance is not just by Pierce, but I do think that the actor playing John was like a good actor for the most part.
He's good, but he gets overshadowed.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Oh,
I'd agree with you. Pierce is the best part about this movie, and it makes it worth watching for him once. And like, sounds really shitty, but I think that's the best thing I could say about this movie. Is I wouldn't watch this movie if David Hyde Pierce was in it, but because David Hyde Pierce is in this movie, I wanted to watch it, and because David Hyde Pierce is a huge part of this movie, I continued watching it all the way through, and the first time, originally, I thought it was a weird movie, but I still really liked parts about it because of him, and so I think this movie is worth watching for David Hyde Pierce's performance, and then just never really going back to afterward.
I think and part of the reason maybe that I like it less and less the more I think about it is other movies that did this better are like American Psycho. And then David R. Pierce is a fine actor. I like him in this, but I feel like a lot of his performance, as fine as it is something I've seen 10 years of with Frasier and other actors like Christian Bale in American Psycho or
well, I think with the whole Frasier thing though, I think that's like kind of what makes the performance, at least to a lot of people, as good as it is, because we're so used to seeing we're used to seeing him play this part, but now he's putting a different spin on it. Like that.
But
He's,
I mean,
yeah, that's what I think makes it worthwhile too.
But that's like what Ian said. Like, it's only good for the initial shock value. After that, I feel like you can go to stuff like Forrest Whitaker and Panic Room and get more out of it. Like, there's more to it within the context of the story in films like American Psycho or Panic Room than there is here.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I just think that, once again, if you like Niles and David Hyde Pierce, if you're a Frasier fan, it's worth watching this movie just for his performance. But if you don't really care for David Hyde Pierce or you don't know anything about him, the interesting stuff in his performance will be lost on you, and then the movie just isn't quite worth watching just for the movie then. And that's a problem. And that's why, it sounds shitty, but that's the nicest thing I can say about the film.
And I mean, people will come in and say that, like, the acting doesn't really bother them. It's more about the way the movies are written and shot, which is fine. I've heard that argument before. If you want a movie that's written better and more cohesive thematically, I think there are lots of other things that have tried to do what this movie is doing, but came together more. I think Nightcrawler makes a lot of the same interesting class struggle sort of thematic ideas, and it actually coalesces into something. It actually builds on something. It has the same sort of thriller vibe, and Jake Gyllenhaal is a much better actor than David Hyde Pierce, I think.
I find it really funny that, like, going into this, I thought it was going to be like, oh, a good old fun time about how we all really liked the movie. It was a lot of fun, and then turns out, like, we all have very drastically different opinions, where Steve hates it, Ian likes... yeah, right.
Steve hates everything.
I don't hate it. I just don't think it's very good.
Yeah, you don't think it's very good. Ian likes parts of it, and I still like the movie a lot. It's probably one of my favorites, like, for movies, but maybe that's just because it did sort of...
Wait, like, in all films, this is one of your favorite movies?
It's in my top 10, yeah.
Wow!
Interesting.
Okay, no, please tell me, like, what you like about it, and then Steve and I will systematically ruin it for you block by block.
Well, you've already kind of done that. Like, for me, it was the performance by Pierce, and it's sort of a thing of, like, that it was kind of, like, and we've seen the kind of, like, we've seen that kind of theme before with a movie where it is, like, don't judge a book by its cover. But I think it's sort of a thing of, at least with an initial viewing, like, if you went into this movie knowing nothing about it and like maybe just knew that, oh, David Hyde Pierce was in it, and you saw his initial performance before we found out he goes crazy, it really could help your enjoyment because you think it's just going to be this generic, like, oh, the big criminal's gonna hijack his house and we're gonna have this kind of like home invasion movie, and then it turns out, oh no, it's the opposite of that. The homeowner's actually torturing the guy who broke into the house. And
that would work better if David Hyde Pierce didn't look so fucking creepy in the cover image, and the movie didn't have the title that it does.
yeah,
sure.
yeah. The title and like the marketing does show a bit too much. The trailer shouldn't have shown that he's crazy in the trailer.
I mean, I could tell you David Hyde Pierce was the villain just by looking at the image, the thumbnail that Netflix has for it.
Well, yeah, I guess the thing with me is it was such a bizarre, different kind of movie from what I've seen. Like, just
it is really out there.
In general, that I've
once again
just got into it.
Have you seen Nightcrawler, American Psycho, or Sleuth?
I've seen American Psycho and Nightcrawler. I have not seen Sleuth.
Watch Sleuth. There's 2 versions of it. Michael Caine is in both, actually. Michael Caine plays the younger man in the original 60s, I want to say, film, and then in the updated, I think, 2009 movie, he plays the older man, and Jude Law plays the younger man, and it's really, really fucking fascinating.
Well, it's like, with the movie, with Perfect Host, I do think the big thing with it, some of the twists you could have kept, I think. Like, you could have kept, at the very least, the one twist I think they could have kept, maybe have it be like just a big end twist, and not like have an extra 30 minutes at the end, would have been that David Hyde Pierce was a cop the whole time. Because that does sort of, like I said, it adds to the whole thing of, like, you know, different than what they appear, because you know, throughout the whole movie you think like, oh, Pierce is this terrible, horrible, evil fucking killer, and then he's a fucking, you know, he's a cop who's supposed to be one of the most respected people like in the city, but he's like one of the worst people.
To be fair, just to talk about the cop thing, because I think the cop thing might be, when I got to the cop thing, I'm like, okay, I don't like this movie. But I think in the hands of someone that's a better director, you could have kept that theme in by just ending it with him turning out to be alive and not have his throat slit, and then rewatching it, you could go back and see that his house is decorated, and you realize that he's a cop just by the way the scene is set. Like, I don't think that's something the film needs to go out of its way to show. And then when the end with the other detective finding the photo, I don't think any of that's really necessary. I think the theme you're talking about is very easy to read into just based on the first 2 acts of the movie. By the time you get to the last 30 minutes and the cop stuff happens, it's just dragging.
Yeah, it feels like they were just, we've had all these twists, let's throw another twist in.
I do agree that the last 30 minutes, and even the kind of the first 30, drag on a little bit, but I do...
First 30 less so, just because it's fast-paced, but yeah.
But it's
Which is interesting, by the way, because the first 30 drag, the last 30 drag, it's only a 90-minute movie.
Sorry, Ben, we keep interrupting.
I should have picked something we'd like, damn it.
No, it's okay. Sometimes it's fun to, like, it's fun to have differing opinions on things.
Yeah, but I'm getting my soul crushed because I really like this movie. I
mean, you can like it, it's fine. We're just talking.
Yeah, I know. I'm having fun with it. I do think that it's a case of, like now that I am thinking about it, like with this whole thing, I do kind of see why it's not, like, it has like a, you know, everyone I've shown the movie to has liked it a lot the first time they saw it, and I think that is kind of what it is. It's just one of those movies where you have to like, you know, some movies people will watch and they're like, oh, this is a really good movie, but you can only watch it the one time, and this might be one of those films because of Pierce's performance, and because for most people the twists would constantly catch them off guard and keep them interested in what's going to happen next, as opposed to just keeping it straight. I do think that it is just a case of maybe they got the wrong... I don't even think the directing's bad, like, because I think everything's shot okay, the acting's good. It's just a case of maybe they just needed they needed to do a couple rewrites to tighten it up a bit.
And apparently this script was reworked to give it like a little more space with the budget.
Yeah, because didn't they do this entire thing in like less than a month in one location?
Yeah, they did it all in 2 weeks in one location in LA, and a little more than 2 weeks, 17 days in one location in LA, and it had a really small budget. So, I mean, I guess that I think they might have actually shot this in David Hyde Pierce's house.
Well, he's got a nice ass
Like-
house, but
Yeah, like I was reading an interview with David Hyde Pierce because I was trying to figure out if the movie was written for him. I was reading an interview with David Hyde Pierce, and like maybe he was just like speaking in the voice of the character or something, but he mentioned something to the effect of like shooting this in my shooting this and dealing with all the stuff going on in my house. And I'm like, does he mean the character's house, or was it actually David Hyde Pierce's house?
Well, I mean, the one kind of funny thing you can have with it, I mean, one thing I was kind of thinking of would be a little bit of a funny thing with it. Like, yeah, the movie does depend a lot on, like, you being a fan of Frasier and seeing his performance in that show. And just watching the movie, I had a lot of fun of, like, just making, like, a fake fan theory of, like, what if this is Niles? And he's just, like, Daphne divorced him after, like, yeah, Daphne divorced him, so he moved off to L.A., and his father died, I guess, in the middle of that, and to honor him, he became a cop. But because Daphne left him, he went absolutely fucking bonkers and started killing people.
That makes it so much better.
Right?
Beats my fan fiction. You know, we talk about all the twists in this, and you know what I just realized, though, with all the twists?
What?
This is like porn for M. Night Shyamalan.
right? Oh, it's gotta be.
If anyone watched the Kong King of the Apes thing, I now have a new hashtag that I'm going to start using. So, hashtag what M. Night Shyamalan jerks off to.
Just post a picture of the perfect host on Twitter, what M. Night Shyamalan jerks off to. Well, it kind of feels like a bit of an M. Night Shyamalan movie where how, like, the end just piles twist upon twist upon twist. The only difference is
I mean, it might have been, like, it's going to sound crazy, it might have been a better movie if he directed.
Yeah, I think he could remake this pretty well.
The acting would be a hell of a lot worse.
Fair
I don't
enough.
know. I feel like cast a couple of actors today for these roles and do it just. I mean, if you get Colin Farrell in as John, and for Warwick you get someone like Jared Leto, it could be much, much better.
Well, one funny thing I noticed...
Wait. Since Steve just mentioned Jared Leto, and Steve's been talking... We need to stretch, fuck it. Steve, you've been talking about how you're really, like, disturbed by all the shit he's been pulling with the other actors on Suicide Squad.
Yeah, him and Air.
Found out a story about Jared Leto where I think all that might stem from.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Someone sent him in their ear in the mail.
Wait, what?
At one point. Yes, someone mailed Jared Leto their ear. They cut off their ear and mailed it to him all Van Gogh style. And so I think that's where this shit with the Joker sending people dead animals comes from.
I guess he just broke psychologically when that happened to him because he's been kind of a dick to people.
I just thought you might enjoy hearing about that, Steve.
That's weird. Okay.
Wow, that's shocking. That's actually really, really shocking that happened.
And
Why would you do that? Like, what is that supposed to mean?
Well, you want to know what makes it worse?
What's that?
He didn't get rid of it. He got it cleaned up and wore it as a necklace.
The fuck is wrong with this dude?
I don't know, man.
Well, hey, maybe he's a good choice for the Joker just because of that. Except,
yeah,
I mean,
right?
I think he's a fine choice for the Joker. It's just this like weird amoral shit he's pulling.
Yeah, someone needs to like be there to put him in check. You know, you just need Ben Affleck to hang around on set all day.
Yeah, physically imposing Batman.
It's going back to the movie just briefly though. I thought it's kind of
no, you're fine. Sorry,
it's funny that you mentioned Steve or Ian. Steve, don't know who mentioned it. About like different actors playing the parts. It's funny you mentioned that, considering the actor playing John, at least to me, looks like discount Matthew McConaughey.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I can see that. He's like if you need someone to be Matthew McConaughey's stunt double.
He's a little bit bigger than McConaughey, but yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about with this movie is, like, we touched on it briefly, but
the director and other people have called this a black or a dark comedy, and I still just don't see it. Like, very few parts of this movie do I find funny at all, where it's even kind of trying to be. And so I don't know where that perception really comes from.
I think the weird thing is, if this was one of the earliest, like, psychological or black comedy films I saw, I might enjoy it on that level more. But because I've gone through and watched movies by people like Shane Black, none of this is really working for me. It feels like, I guess the nicest way for me to say it feels a little bit like Amateur Hour.
Well, I mean, like, I know I'm gonna be looking at the director's filmography, and Nick Tomnay.
Is that his name?
Yeah, Nick Tomnay. He had,
and this was his first feature length too.
I think this is the only feature length he might have done.
Okay, I don't see the writers listed anywhere else either. So it's the director.
He was the
writer.
He's one of the writers, but he's not the only. Yeah, I'm saying here. Yeah, perfect. He did. Okay, yeah, the only movie he ever did is this. This is the only like feature length film he did. He also did like an episode of a TV show called Twisted or Too Twisted, and another short called Swimming to France. But like that's it.
Okay, and then the other writers seem like have done nothing but the short and this movie. So okay, so this is literally just a one-off project.
Yeah, and I think it does show because like it's weird because I think just watching it one time and not really thinking about it critically, it's a perfectly fine and enjoyable experience. And I feel like we're coming off more negative than either of us mean to, Steve. Because I don't have any problem with this movie. I don't think it's like a bad movie or anything. I just, like, the more I think about it, the more problems I find with it. And I'm just left here kind of like, I enjoyed it the first time, but watching it again, thinking about it critically, it doesn't really work. But I think most people that walk out of it just after the first time watching it and never really go back to it are going to be fine with it and think it was a, fun or interesting movie.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable... Okay, it's an interesting experience, if not enjoyable. And I'd still say it's a bad movie, but that doesn't mean I was bored at any point.
Well, it's like, I think it's definitely a movie that, whether or not it should be, it's a movie that at the very least should be seen and maybe supported because, like I said, yeah, there's American Psycho and, like you said, Sleuth
and Nightcrawler
and Nightcrawler, but this is still, I guess you could say, different enough that it's something that still at least should be seen and like, kind of like, I don't know what the budget for this movie was.
Low budget though.
Like very low. It's still a movie that I do think that people should see, even though there's no reason for them to watch it now because it's kind of a movie that where the less you know going into it, the better. Like,
yeah, you don't want to get spoiled on this one. The moment you are, it kind of hurts the experience overall.
Well, maybe that's why we don't like it as much the second or third time we see it, because we know what's coming. So it kind of tarnishes the enjoyment. Because you're like, oh, he's doing this, even though he's like a cop or whatever. And
the other problem with it is none of that stuff is seeded particularly well. The only thing that, like, originally I remember thinking it seemed to come out of nowhere was the makeup thing. But going back and watching this a second time, they do enough to set up that he's kind of got a little bit of a background or some kind of theatrical experience.
Well, the makeup thing especially, I think is a bit more hinted at. Maybe not early enough, but if you do notice, like, they're doing that Super 8 film where he's cutting himself all over. And then after John tries to stab him and he like lifts up his shirt to be like, oh, look, look, you didn't stab me. There's no scar.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's the mask that he... Yeah, there's no scars, and then there's the mask that he puts on him, and he got out of a closet of masks. So there's a lot of stuff like that I feel like actually hinted toward the makeup thing, but I don't think there was enough stuff to hint at Warwick being crazy.
Not
before it's revealed.
Him being crazy, and then also the whole cop angle. Like, it just... I can maybe see you getting away with the makeup thing. I still feel like even though it's seeded, I'm not sure it really plays much of a practical purpose. You just have to kind of give it to the film as being there as symbolic and artsy. But that's the problem, is that the cop stuff feels so tacked on that when you start getting twists like the makeup, it doesn't matter how well it's set up. It just kind of feels like you're not doing this naturally enough. You're just kind of stringing people along.
Well, how would they have really kind of with like only maybe not changing the movie a lot? How really would they have hinted at something like he's a cop and not have it be something that people would see coming when like the twist happens?
You wouldn't even have to hint at it. You could just do the twist earlier and have John like find his badge or something.
You could have John find his badge. You're traveling around his house the entire movie. It wouldn't be that difficult to just like have John sit next to something and there's a photo of him in uniform. Like you don't have to make it too extravagant. It's just set dressing.
Yeah, and like just more than that, there's a scene where John takes money out of Warwick's wallet. The badge could have been there, and that could have been like, that would have been a really good twist really early on, and we would have thought that this was going to be a completely different movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I feel like this is a project you did in film school, and then you never went back and made it better. Like, this is just something you do to like test out techniques and stuff. It's not a real story.
Well, I guess that is the big.
I think that's a little unfair.
Well, the movie.
I don't know. Because it feels like this is something that you do once you realize the mechanics behind making a film. I think that's probably what the original Host short film probably was, and then they just never went back and bothered to like oomph it up to make it something that coalesces into like an actual work.
Well, because that's like the big thing with the original, where the short film really just kind of the short film actually ends with the reveal that Warwick's like nuts, like, and then he's like about like that he's like this guy who like is imagining all these people at this party or whatever. So I think it might have been like because the first 30 minutes, even though they drag a little bit, they are still like a good part of the movie because it has good build up, and then it like if you don't know going into the movie like that David Hyde Pierce is the bad guy, even though it's near impossible because of all the goddamn marketing, then it is a kind of interesting twist for that with some of the stuff they do, like the whole fact that he drugs him with wine, because it kind of gives the like that does kind of give the impression like, did he intend to drug him from the beginning, or did he only start doing that after he found out he was a criminal who was maybe going to kill him in his house? Because we never see him actually drug the wine. That
was my question about it. Like, did he just want to bring him in from the very beginning, and the fact that he was a bank robber only added to it? And if that's really the case, then do you need all that elaborate bank robber setup?
Mm-hmm. I don't really know, but it's sort of a thing of like I think it might have just been a case of he wrote up to the point of Warwick going crazy, and then or like revealing that he's crazy, and then when he actually decided like he's going to make it a feature length thing, it's like,
and like the thing is there's like 10 years between the short film and this film, so he had the better part of 10 years to just come up with really fucked up ideas for like this hostage in this guy's house and for all this tension building stuff, and that is the best part of the goddamn movie, right?
Yeah,
you can all agree on that.
Yeah.
And so like that section of the movie is fantastic. So he had 10 years to dream that shit up, and then he's like, well, fuck, now I need an ending. And so then one just gets like, fucking, what else have I written? Okay, a cop steals money from a criminal, blah, blah, blah.
That's kind of the thing. It's like, that's maybe just why I like the movie. It's like, even when I first saw it, I wasn't really into the whole cop thing too much at the end, but I find that the middle part, like when it's just Warwick and John in the house and we're seeing what he does, the movie does have a lot of fun and try like with its concept, and you can get into it a lot more and like just like relish in the fucked up shit Warwick's doing to John.
And see, that's why again I feel like I want to call it film school, because I'm sure making this movie was ridiculously fun, and that's the only places where it works is like you get to hang out with David Hyde Pierce doing all this random batshit crazy stuff, doing some of the cutting to make it like people are in the room and then people disappear out of the room and doing the crazy stuff. Like it's very much a movie that's interestingly made with lots of different techniques, but none of them are used to their full potential, and they're all kind of just spliced in. So it's forced to be a movie, and it never coalesces anything. So it just feels like film school. There are parts that I really enjoy, but it's not something that works.
Yeah, and I feel like the biggest problem with the ending is that, like, it's a really annoying trope in horror movies that the villain has to lose a lot. I think 90% of the best horror movies are the ones where the bad guy wins, because that's scary. And so, like, it feels like the whole cop thing is really tacked on at the end to make sure that Warwick gets his comeuppance. And that bothers me, because it's so unnecessary to the rest of the film.
It is. By the way, for the whole dark comedy thing, one scene I can think of that is, like, intended to make you laugh, and it did make me laugh a little bit anyway, is when we see John waking up in the bathtub, and it cuts to Warwick, quote-unquote, fucking one of the girls, and we see it from John's perspective, so it looks like he's just thrusting at air.
Was that supposed? Okay, that's interesting, because I didn't take that as a joke. I just thought that I just started taking that as, like, symbolically, what is this supposed to mean?
I think that was intended to be a joke, like, not.
I don't think it was intended to be a joke. I just thought it was supposed to be creepy.
That's weird. See, and this is the thing. Like, we all have different reads on one particular scene, which is sometimes fine, but I think the deeper problem is that maybe the scene itself doesn't have enough natural connections to the rest of the theme, so we have to grasp at it.
Well, the thing is, we all have very different interpretations of even just the themes of the movie, so...
And again, I think that just goes back to, like, none of the individual aspects are connecting well enough for any of us to really even be on any sort of common wavelength about what the movie is allegedly about.
It helps the movie be up for discussion, and definitely makes this an interesting episode.
No, that's true, and I mean, I'm not saying everyone has to have the same read on a movie. I just feel like what a movie with various interpretations should be is that everyone is using the exact same chain of evidence to come up with multiple results. I think this movie is everyone picking and choosing aspects that come up with interpretations, but we aren't really working with the whole thing together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be fair to say. Like, I don't think anyone can, like, justify every scene in this movie for their interpretation.
Oh no! I could.
No, I think my interpretation works pretty well with most of the things in this movie. I don't think there's anything that openly contradicts my interpretation.
I guess that's fair.
I'd sort of say the same thing, because there's nothing really going against, like, because it's a whole thing of, like, by the end of the... I know you're saying, like, oh, the good guy always has to win in, like, horror movies, and that annoys you. But then we really kind of find out, like, in the beginning of the movie, we think that John is the bad guy and Warwick's the good guy. And then by the end of it, it turns out, John, even though he's the criminal, he's the good guy, and Warwick's Warwick's the bad guy, even though he's a cop. And Warwick really... Yeah, the other cop finds out about the photograph, but from what we're told, he's going to do the same thing he did to John to the cop. Either kill him or just do the makeup or whatever.
Which, I mean, like, what kind of fucking plan is that, right? Oh, he's just going to drug the cop? Oh, yeah, that's not going to have any goddamn consequences.
And is he going to kill him? Or is he just going to let him go?
Well, that's the thing. That is one thing I will agree with. Letting John go really does hinder the movie a lot, because it really does make you question of how hasn't he been caught yet is kind of a big thing, and how long has he been doing this?
Especially if all the party guests are supposed to be previous victims.
Yeah,
and that is a huge problem.
And again, I go back to something like American Psycho, where, like, you can let go of something like Patrick Bateman dragging a clear dead body across the floor and people noticing his suit instead of the dead body, because it's a heightened reality. I can buy this movie making it so no one captures David Hyde Pierce because it's a heightened reality, but it doesn't give me that. It gives me, like, a much darker, grittier reality with a twisted psychology, and I think tonally it could have gotten away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's sort of a thing of, if they would have given a reason within the film as to why he let John go, and maybe make it clear that the other guy in the book was killed, and, like, maybe this was just, like, the exception rather than what he normally does, it could have worked a little better.
Well, here's the thing with that. I'd agree with that interpretation if not for the fact that all the scars are fake.
Well, not all of them. The ones on his head aren't fake.
No, there's like
he had 2 little cuts on his head from getting hit on the head, but David Hyde Pierce's character Warwick made those scars look worse than they actually were. So from the very beginning, he is applying makeup to this guy whenever he gets knocked out.
Well, like I said, I still think it's a case of like maybe the reason he let John go is because of the whole chess game, because he promised.
Yeah, but like what I'm saying is I don't think that argument works, because from the very beginning he's applying makeup to this guy. From the very beginning, and we see the makeup box has been there like as part of his whole arsenal the whole time.
Yeah.
That's why I think that argument of, oh, well, he just let John go because he won chess, I don't think that argument works.
Yeah.
Something else I want to mention with this is that I think the soundtrack is really good. I think it's spliced in horribly with the editing of the movie. I think there are a lot of moments where I like the music being played, but it doesn't fit tonally with what we're seeing in the least.
Examples?
So the opening where you see him like just doing various stuff and you have like that big upbeat music, I think that works. I think that's fine. But then we get later in the movie and we're seeing some of the fucked up stuff with like the chess game and the conversation and then the conversation they have about him being worthless, and the music starts ramping up as they're talking, but not in like a high tense Hans Zimmer way, in more like a bum 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 kind of way. Like almost a rock way. There are lots of instances here where John is supposed to be mentally exhausted from dealing with David Hyde Pierce, but the music plays as like a weird rock soundtrack.
Yeah, it needed more of like a classical feel. Like I'm trying to remember the specific name of the song, but you needed something like just a little classical building piano kind of thing.
And then it does,
because you could have had it ramping up.
It's the most generic final music chord ever.
Right? Yeah. I tend to agree with you. I really, I hadn't thought about it, but the more I do, I'm like, yeah, I really don't. There's no moment in this where I felt the score really captured anything for me.
It might have, and maybe this would be a different edit, but this is one of those instances where I think a movie without score would have been better served. I think a lot of psychological dramas, for the most part, do have lots of quiet moments, because the absence of music is just as telling as the inclusion of music. And so stuff like Panic Room works because there were all of these moments where you're just staring at this guy trapped in a box and there's no sound, and it's terrifying. And this movie needed that. The movie has the classic modern Hollywood problem of always requiring some kind of sound in a scene, and this is a story that doesn't require that.
Well, it's funny you mention like the whole thing about score with the movie. There isn't a score like that was made specifically for the movie. It's other songs put into it, which like a lot of classical stuff. And like for what you were gonna say in terms of like doesn't fit tonally, I thought you were gonna talk about like the random scene with Car Wash playing when they're dancing. Which
that's fine. I mean, that's because they're dancing. But like in other places where it's not supposed to be a wacky scene, but the music itself is kind of wacky.
Well,
yeah,
I do. It is a movie that really, I think it had a lot of potential with what they had, like with the idea that they had, and I even think that it would have had that same kind of potential with, like, because I know you guys were saying like, oh, do a remake and have like Jared Leto or whoever else is Warwick. I don't think this is a movie you really could do without David Hyde Pierce in some capacity, because he's really what makes the movie, at least for me. Like if it wasn't like, and I think you even said so yourself, Ian, if it wasn't for Pierce, the movie wouldn't be all that great. But it's the fact that his performance is so good and like so.
I would say this is a really awful movie if not for David Hyde Pierce.
But and again, this goes back to something you said, Ian. I think the David Hyde Pierce thing only works if you know David Hyde Pierce. I think you could remake this movie without him as a better story, and it would be perfect fun. I don't think this is a story that requires David Hyde Pierce. I think it's an experience that's enhanced by knowing who he is, and those are different.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I agree with you completely. I don't think this movie works without David Hyde Pierce, and so the only reason to watch this movie is David Hyde Pierce. If it was the exact same script and a completely different generic actor, I wouldn't watch it. I would have stopped after the reveal of the dinner. I've been like, okay, fuck this.
Yeah, I mean
I'm out.
It's one of those things where I can see everything that it could have been on multiple occasions, but it never quite gets there.
Yeah. And again, I didn't pick up on any of this or have any of these thoughts beyond that was fucking weird, but David Hyde Pierce was creepy and that was neat to see. That was my initial takeaway. And I still agree with that initial takeaway. That's how I think most people will read this movie that have seen David Hyde Pierce is, that was a really fucking weird ass movie, but David Hyde Pierce was creepy and that was kind of cool to see. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, I mean, even knowing the reveal, you can still go into it and enjoy David Hyde Pierce being a fucking nut job.
Well, it's like
That's
some of the,
that's not gonna change.
well, you can know the cop reveal, but there are some things like you can't know going into it about the whole makeup thing. That's that's a really because like that is the thing. Like I think that it's part of me likes the fact that he doesn't kill John at the end of the movie, because it is something like you don't really expect this psycho like killer person to act like you expect him to just kill the character and like that's the end of the movie, on to the next victim, but they do something different and actually having him stay alive. But it is something that really brings the movie down, and I don't know how you would fix that while keeping John alive in there, like unless you like made it more clear why he did kill John. Although one thing I did want to talk about a little bit that's kind of interesting, the reveal that with the postcards with Julia, the the girl that David Hyde Pierce is pretending to be, like is pretending to be his girlfriend. I don't know if that's implying like if that is like a way that he deliberately like goes after victims that way, and it actually kind of got me thinking, since John did that, like, and pretended to be fucking Julia's friend and was a criminal, is Warwick only killing criminals, or is he killing like just regular people? Is like kind of the thing.
It's not even anywhere near explicit enough to give any kind of answer to that.
Can I just say that like the postcard thing really annoyed me? I think that's another pretty big problem with this movie.
Go for it.
Because you're right, it doesn't give you any answer as to how that's supposed to work. But then the bigger problem is just, even when you get to that reveal, who the fuck is Julia? Like, why is it that he doesn't physically create things for anyone else? Like, he does the thing where he's eating off people's plates, but he never physically does anything for another person, right? Like, he's not going off and setting up a scene.
No,
to make
I disagree with that.
Well, he is giving drinks to them in some scenes.
Yeah, he's giving
I know he's
drinks.
getting drinks. I'm saying like he's never doing anything to create an effect as if the person's there, right? Like he's never doing a scene where he's setting up something has moved because one of his imaginary friends has touched it.
But well, what about when John?
The chessboard.
John falls into one of the girls that he sees, and he like lifts
then
her up.
He's reacting as if she's there. He's not knocking over chairs for her.
What about the chessboard then?
What about the chessboard? Like, no, I mean, I'm not saying like he's not reacting to them being there. I'm saying like he's never in any place.
He's not creating a life behind them. I'll give you that.
When he's doing the postcard thing and talking to John, he's also playing chess while writing on the postcard, and he's making a move on the chessboard and then saying, "Oh, that was a bad move." So and so.
That's not what I'm saying though. I'm saying like, okay, like say for example, one of his imaginary friends is supposed to be walking around and knocks over a table while they're walking. He doesn't immediately go there and knock over the table to keep up the illusion that they're actually there. He actually believes these are people here with him. But the postcard thing is him breaking that character to create the effect of the person being there.
Yeah, but he doesn't. But when John's
the problem is
talking
that
to him,
the problem is he's supposed to be reacting to things that he thinks are happening, but in places with the postcards, he's creating the effect he's supposed to be reacting to.
Yeah, but when John's talking to him and he's like, oh, Julia, I never went to fucking, I never went to Australia. I don't know Julia.
But that's not the point. That's him reacting to something he thought Julia told him. He's not creating something about Julia independently to react to.
Yeah, the point Steve's making is he doesn't make any of the other characters do anything. He doesn't
he doesn't make Rupert choose a move or whatever. He doesn't make anybody besides the food thing, he doesn't make any of the other characters do anything. They're all kind of acting independently from him. Whereas with Julia is the only one who he's created a narrative for. And I didn't think about that. And I think the best argument I could make for that, Steve, is he's eating other people's food for them and reacting to how they're eating. So that's about the furthest extent. So if there'd been more stuff like that, it would work better,
Yeah,
but
but then the problem is, like, there are 2 scenes like that with the postcards and the eating, and then nothing else is consistent with it.
Yeah, I agree. That's the problem. Is it's not prevalent enough.
Yeah, like the Julia thing, I feel like you could have just erased the Julia thing from the movie. You could have just had him get a letter and then have him walk in. You didn't need Julia as a setup, especially because we don't know who she is.
Or he could have just gone to knock on the guy's door. I think the Julia thing was just a good, like, reveal thing. Because you get kind of a double reveal for it, right? You get the reveal of, I don't actually fucking know Julia, I just have this stupid postcard, and I stole it from your mailbox. And then you get the reveal again that, just a scene or two later that Julia's not real.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean...
But also, if you notice, when John is talking about Julia to David Hyde Pierce, he's writing down on the letter, but when he's paying attention to John, he acts like he doesn't know that he's doing that. He acts like he doesn't know that he's writing the postcard. So I don't know if maybe it is a case of I know what you're saying, Steve, that, like, yeah, he doesn't physically create anything for anything else, but it's a thing of, I don't know maybe if he's actually, I don't know if he thinks he's doing it or not. Like, if he actually knows
he's clearly not conscious of it. The problem is just the film never acknowledges that kind of stuff. It never builds a consistent logic around it. Like, you can go back and trace all of Fight Club and know that Tyler Durden doesn't interact with anything and that it is all Edward Norton.
Spoilers!
You can go back and you can know that. The film is designed that way. With this movie, there is no consistent logic surrounding the people that aren't really there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the real problem. And, like, once again, to get back to the best part about this movie, though, what David Hyde Pierce is doing, not even, like, just as being Niles Crane, but being creepy, but what he's doing as a physical actor is really impressive.
Yeah.
I watched this movie, and there is literally one shot, and I blame the director, not the actor, for this. There is one shot where David Hyde Pierce's pantomime is off, and that's when he's holding up the ice pack for the girl. He's like high in one shot, low in another, high in the other two. There's just one shot where he's off on his pantomime. Everything else is dead on perfect.
Yeah, he's like, pretty great.
From scene to scene, he did fantastic with that stuff.
I especially love the scene where the imaginary girl is asking John a question and he's just stopping and staring and reacting as if the question's still hanging.
Mm-hmm.
He's just really good with subtle acting and that stuff.
Yeah, and to get back to the black comedy thing real quick, because I've been trying to think of one. There was one line that really did fucking get me, where one of the party guests or whatever said, "Warwick, this is boring," and Warwick goes, "Oh, is everyone not entertained?" And John's just kind of sitting there fucking on his own. He's like, "I don't know about anybody else, but I'm having a great time." That was really funny to me. Nothing else really worked as well as that one line. If that had been the rest of the movie, just him making these fucking sarcastic-ass comments as he deals with Warwick's crazy shit, that would have been hilarious, and I would have enjoyed the movie much more than I did.
Well, I think it might just be a case of it's trying to kind of be both, and maybe they're sort of thinking, maybe the reason they can...
It's trying to be both and failing at both.
Maybe the reason that it's considered a black comedy is because everyone involved in the movie, including the director, including Pierce, know that it's a much funnier experience if you imagine... Like, if you imagine Warwick as just being Niles Crane gone crazy, it actually is really funny. But and I think that might be the mentality they had when making the movie, and that kind of seeped in to what they thought the genre of the movie was. But because we're not in that same situation, we don't see it that way.
Well, Alex, if you're watching this, then on your next binge through Frasier, go ahead and add this to your
to your watch list and then tell us if the film works better that way.
Now I gotta change what film to do for a commentary because I'm now really worried what Cap and Raska were gonna say about it.
Do Caligula from 1979. Do a commentary on that on Geekvolution, goddammit. I would kill to hear Cap talk about Caligula. It's gotta be the X-rated cut.
I guess it's interesting that like the three of us though have very differing opinions, it seems, where it's a thing of, Steve thinks it's a bad movie. Ian is like, I think you're in the middle, like dead center, pretty much.
Yeah, there's enough that I like about it that I was happy I watched it once, but I can. You know what? Here's my recommendation for this movie. Watch this movie because David Hyde Pierce is awesome. Just watch it one time and then don't ever talk about it again, and you'll have a very good.
Yeah, but then
experience.
you two have those opinions, and I really like the movie a lot. I like it a little less now that I know it doesn't work as well as it could have, which really makes me depressed. It really doesn't make me want to talk about movies with you guys ever again.
Oh, but Ben, we gotta come back. This is too much fun.
It's weird when Ian and I are mostly on the same page too.
Yeah, I know, like, because Steve's usually wrong about everything.
Right? Like, how is this happening?
It's refreshing to hear you be
Yeah,
right.
but it's just that, okay,
once.
let's, I've debated this movie. I've debated Batman v Superman, and now this movie, and both of you have completely crushed my spirit with liking those movies. It really...
Hey, dude, once again, I like Batman v Superman.
Okay, maybe not you guys.
It was
Steve, mainly. Steve, you broke my heart, Steve. You broke my heart.
I mean, I hate that
does
movie,
that,
so...
He fucking does that, dude. It's ridiculous.
I should have picked something else. I really should.
No, it's fine, really. I'm glad you picked this. I had a fun time talking about this, and I'm sorry if I made you like it less. I didn't realize that I didn't like it as much as I did in this review, if that sentence made any goddamn sense. Like, I really thought I was gonna have just kind of go into this review and like, this is a weird movie, and I'm not sure if all this stuff works. And if I'd heard arguments that won me over on it more, I could totally see myself liking this movie. But the more I talk about it, the more I look into it, I'm like, hey, I just don't think I don't think it works. And then Steve's just there, every time, Ben, you made some great arguments for it, but every time you made an argument, Steve's just like, no, but here's why that doesn't work. And then he's got arguments for why your arguments don't work. And I'm sorry, but Steve he won me over to his side, to not really caring for it.
You guys keep saying, like, I make good points, and then Steve always shoots them down, and I feel like a complete idiot.
But that's what Steve does.
I mean, I go to
like,
school
for
to
everybody.
argue, Like, my major is arguing, so...
Like, yeah, don't feel bad that Steve makes good arguments. Like, and here's the thing, Steve, to critique your reviewing, like, Steve will make good arguments, but I will think about them later. I'm like, I'm not sure he really established that premise very well. Because, like, I don't know, the one thing I cannot think of an example right now to save my life, but you'll hear this as a point Steve makes occasionally. Oh, wait, I got one from the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Steve made this really interesting point because we were talking about how the pacing of that movie works. And Steve said something to the effect of, well, if you're going to do lightning pacing, then you need moments where the pacing just slows to a crawl and you spend some time with it to demonstrate how important that those moments are compared to how quickly everything else moves. And ultimately, I still don't agree with that point, but I don't think that he did enough to establish that point regardless. And, it's a review we did, 2 years ago now.
It was probably
so
last
not
October,
really,
right?
No, it was the October before. It was our first horror movie.
Oh, okay.
What?
But, like, so it's a weird point and stuff, and I'm like, well, you didn't really do that much to establish it. So just because Steve destroyed you with really good arguments, really listen back to him and think about him, because you might end up disagreeing with him in a way you didn't realize before.
Well, there are still things,
and that's the importance of putting this on recording and hearing it, and that's the importance of you, the listener, writing down your comments of what you think about what we're
I guess
saying,
like just
because
that's
Steve
the thing. It's like
is wrong all the time.
Like, I still disagree with Steve on a couple things with this movie, and yeah, I don't like the movie as much. And it's probably still going to be in my top 10. I think the reason it's in my top 10 is because of the experience I had the first time I saw the movie. that might that
I can see
Yeah,
that.
that's fair.
where it's like just like it was a movie that really the trailer for the movie made me interested in it, and then the constant twists and just the absolute amazing performance of David Hyde Pierce just kept me pretty much with a big smile on my face throughout the entire movie. And I didn't react the same way you did, Steve. Like when I saw the whole cop twist and all that, I just kept going like, "Holy shit, he's a cop! That's fucking crazy!" Like, I guess the movie won me over the first time I saw it, and it might just be a case of like, yeah, it's a movie that I'll watch the one time and maybe should just kind of keep like locked away in a safe and only watch it like maybe 10 years later when I've forgotten everything about it. That way I can have that same experience again.
I mean, that's fair. It's one of those things where the first experience really shapes what your perspective on it forever is going to be, mostly because you don't necessarily see the same kind of movies enough. So like, I can recognize a lot of movies that aren't very good, but because they had an impact on me, I enjoyed them nonetheless. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but it happens. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with liking the movie. I just don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
That definitely does.
And Steve, like, did you like this more before you started to talk about it?
No.
Or,
Yes.
like,
No, I mean, I was interested, and then very quickly I came around to the fact that it's probably not a good movie. And then the more I talk about it, the more I figured out why I thought that, as opposed to getting worse or looser on it.
Gotcha. No, that's fair. I was just curious. It's interesting. Is there any one point at which the movie lost you, or was it the cop reveal?
By the time we got to the cop reveal, I knew it was a bad movie. It never like physically lost my attention until we got there.
Okay. That's just interesting. Yeah, I tend to agree with you more and more, Steve, but I still like things about it enough, particularly David Hyde Pierce. I like that enough that I still think I'd recommend watching this to someone. Like, if they're like, you know, if someone like, "Oh, Perfect Host, is that good?" I'm like, it's worth a watch if you like David Hyde Pierce.
Well, I mean, like, it's
That'd be my takeaway for this movie.
I mean, you can't really say that recommendation now. It's weird that we're doing this review. It's like, oh, I recommend you see it, where it's like, this is really only a good review for people who've already seen it, because as we were saying, most of the twists, if you know most of the twists going in the movie, it does not work as well. So
it's a one and done kind of thing. You don't really want to go through a discussion or have it spoiled for you.
Mm-hmm. And maybe there are arguments for this that we're just not thinking of.
It's possible.
I
really doubt.
I doubt
that, considering I pretty much watched the movie an hour before doing this, and as soon as you were like, I don't like this, I spent pretty much the entire like time you guys were talking, and I wasn't going, what the hell can I say to make me sound smart and liking this movie?
The existential crisis of whether or not what is happening to you is genuine is really mind-boggling as set up in this movie. There, now it's Steve's favorite fucking movie of all time. All you have to do is throw the word existentialism in it, and Steve's like, ooh.
Yeah, existentialism gets me every time. Sartre's good like that.
Okay. Right? I think that's going to do it for the review. Let's go ahead and do a score. Oh, okay. Ben, do you know how our scores work or no?
It was something like a certain amount of things out of like the
Yeah. You can go last. Okay, I will give this movie 2 out of 5, all for David Hyde Pierce's performance. 2 out of 5 fake daggers.
That scene bugged me too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, like, why? He just always has that on the fucking wall? That's kind of nuts.
He always has it on the fucking wall, and you're really telling me that you can't feel a blade go into a person instead of collapse?
I'll give him that part just a little bit because he's drunk.
Also, he's forcing it, so collapsible blade will stop, but if you keep pushing, the rest of the metal's supposed to go in. So, I don't know what the hell's up with that.
No. They showed that he puts his hand on it and the tip goes in.
Yeah, but he stops when it gets solid. The way he was forcing it into him, he kept punching it into him. At some point, the blade collapsing stops and the rest of the blade goes in.
No. Like let me finish. Like the tip went in and then the rest of the blade went into the hand.
Did it all go into the hand?
I have prop. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Wasn't
Or
sure.
not. You didn't see it go all the way in, but you saw the rest of the blade start to retract.
Okay,
So-
that's fair.
And I know how prop knives work, and that's exactly what would happen.
Okay.
Okay, Steve. How about you?
I'm gonna give this, for David Hyde Pierce, 1 out of 5 fucking invisible women.
Wait. Let's break this one down. So, are you giving it like one invisible woman to fuck, or one
like, does
scene
David Hyde
of a
Pierce
guy
get-
fucking invisible woman?
Well, like, does David Hyde Pierce get one invisible woman to fuck, or does he get like out of 5 he could possibly get, or
Yes, out of 5 potential invisible women to fuck, David Hyde Pierce gets 1.
Okay, that's thank you. I almost want a cartoon of that now. Okay, Ben, how about you? What's your score?
I'd probably give it maybe 3. I'd say I'm trying to think of like a clever way to go with it. 3 makeup kits out of 5.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you still like it quite a bit. I just can't get there with you.
It was a 4 before this, and now it's a 3. So thanks, Steve.
What are the other top 10 movies on your list?
Yeah, we'll just
Ben?
systematically break them down.
Oh, I don't want you to ruin Wolf of Wall Street and Fifth Estate, you bastards.
I like Wolf of Wall Street.
You'll probably still ruin it for me.
I really like that movie.
It's like, Ben, all the things you like about Wolf of Wall Street are wrong. Now here's the things you're supposed to like. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, and next week we will be back for our 300th episode reviewing the film 300. That should be a lot of fun. Thank you, Ben, for joining us for this. It was fun ruining things that you love.
Well, fuck you for having me.
Yeah, right? And just keep in mind, you wanted to be on more episodes.
Yes, and now
So you have no one to blame but you.
yes, that's true. That's very true.
Oh, that's funny. Yay, crushed dreams. I'm happy.
Yay for ruining it. We're gonna have a new segment on Geeky Gentleman called "Ruining Movies Ben Likes."
Yeah, I like it. It's a new weekly segment. It'll just be Steve trashing everything. Because we all know that Steve hates everything.
I do. It's my thing. I have to hate everything, so you don't have to.
Puppies and rainbows? Fuck
Yeah.
it.
Fuck puppies. Fuck
Yeah.
puppies. Fuck rainbows. Fuck reflected
pup-
light in general.
You know,
Steve all's like, no, wait.
fuck
This-
breathing. That shit sucks.
Steve's all like, this puppy doesn't justify its own existence.
No, it doesn't. Look at it there being hairy when it very clearly should not be.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the politician.
And I'm the other guy.
And we're Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things. Or was it all just an elaborate ruse? Woo!
I put makeup on Steve to make him think he was talking about the movie.
You didn't click on a video. You only thought you did.